would say to meet your clients where they are and seek to understand exactly what it is they need, because there's no one size fits all solution. We can't be too rigid in our approach, and we must ask a lot of questions to understand their vision, yes. However, we also need to be firm as needed in order to help the client understand any limitations or pitfalls associated with their particular vision, right? So for example, I recall a client in the oil and gas industry had such a large volume of documents to translate that when they discovered MT was a possibility, and this was many years ago before AI was a buzzword, they thought that MT, machine translation, would be their silver bullet. And I, of course, as a trained professional translator, was appalled that they would even consider using raw MT for their engineering content. So what do I do, right? So first I had to ask questions in order to understand for myself the vastness of the documents that they needed to make sense of. Second, I calmly explained how MT could go horribly and sometimes amusingly wrong. For instance, if I recall correctly, there was a line about flying pigs in a highly technical engineering document about pipeline pig launchers. So, but if in the end what they wanted was a just translation that could then help them narrow down what documents to then have professionally translated, and this would be a perfectly acceptable solution, provided that each MT translation's footer included a disclaimer, just making it very clear, this is raw MT, not a professional translation meant for gisting only, something to that effect. So I had to dial back my knee-jerk reaction to say no to raw MT. I had to accept the utility of it in that context. Then, as I explained the downside to the client, I was also firm in the use of that disclaimer I described. But to get back to the sectors that you cited, I would say it's important to also dive in to what makes that particular sector unique and to be in tune with the values they espouse as you go about translating or interpreting. By this, I mean HIPAA and confidentiality are so incredibly important in the medical context. So that should be a value that one prioritizes in this setting. For law enforcement, it would be quality control, consistency in translation. And for government, everything needs to be by the book. So understanding and following established protocols and procedures is an absolute must. I've learned to do a lot of listening to come up with the right probing questions, to involve all stakeholders where possible, and sometimes to let some things take their course. It can be very frustrating to know the right approach from the get-go, from a language access standpoint, and to see that decision makers are not there yet, for whatever reasons they may have. And so sometimes you have to let them take that winding road in order for them to get to your same conclusion. Sometimes it involves several meetings where the idea is perhaps expressed differently. And sometimes it takes getting other gatekeepers involved. The challenge is always that there are too many cooks in the kitchen. When there are too many moving parts to a project or too many stakeholders or gatekeepers, language access goals can take longer, particularly with clients in large bureaucracies, such as anything related to the government. So to effectively address this, it has to be your mission to find all decision makers, or at least the top one, who may have the last word, and ensure that that person sees you as the expert of all things translation and interpretation or language access related. How many of us have had clients return a translation saying that they handed off your work product to a bilingual person in their company and their opinion was that your translation could be improved, right? So when that gatekeeper or that top person sees you as the expert, that sort of scenario is unlikely to happen. Or even if it does, if this bilingual person that they trust comes back with something, they'll think twice and they'll be like, no, we hired them to be the language expert. Let's trust her word. I would say determine what success in this field will look like for you and set goals and micro goals and never stop pursuing them. This is what has served me well in obtaining multiple certifications and multiple opportunities to work across varied sectors. And it's okay if goals or passions change over time, but the key is to keep pushing forward, to keep wanting to learn, keep wanting to improve, and keep wanting to professionalize. For instance, at the beginning of my career, I swore I would end up being a federally certified court interpreter. But after having worked in a legal setting for 5 years and marrying an attorney, I realized I wanted to practice in a setting that wouldn't be as rigid or stressful. Plus, I do enough litigating at home. So from a more practical standpoint, I also had a spreadsheet where I tracked my time spent on each business-related task. And I set both time-oriented and financial goals with a look toward the next 5 years. And now when I look back at those goals that I had set for the 5 or 10-year mark, I'm amazed at the fact that I did reach them, except not in the way that I envisioned. And that's okay. The point is that I did, and in some cases even exceeded them. So that makes me really proud. I think we live in a faux hyper-connected world. And more people are realizing this and yearning for real connections, which lie in interpersonal relationships. I realize there's a lot of hype surrounding new technologies such as AI, but the more involved I am in these organizations, the more I realize the future of our profession lies in the basic pursuit of professionalism, in educating our clients and end users, in taking personal responsibility for increasing our skills and knowledge as T&I professionals. Yes, it's important to learn and embrace where possible new technologies, but in my view, in light of my most recent experience, going old school and forging meaningful relationships with your clients and colleagues is what has reaped the most benefits for me. Going to conferences, offering your expertise in the form of presentations and speaking engagements, both for the benefit of our clients and end users, are all ways in which we as T&I professionals can both have a meaningful impact on our industry and signal to the world that we are experts in our field. In my own practice, I simply never stop learning, whether it's related to a new technology or to new ways of doing business. Sign me up.